Welcome, Nolan. Thank you so much for joining me for this conversation and the third episode of Grow with the Flow. Let's start with introductions. Can you give me a little bit about your journey, how you started Worth Search, and where you are right now?
Yeah, sure. Well, thanks for having me. Always happy to chat with you, Manan, and excited to chat a little bit more. So my journey, I've started Worth Search about 16 months ago, and Recruiterflow was one of the first products that we started using, and it's been great so far. Started the firm and was just myself for about the first 6 or 7 months, and then brought on 2 people, and we are now 5 full-time, with a couple of kind of contract sourcing resources that we can turn on and off. So it's been a great journey over the last year and a half almost.
So you come from a corporate background or internal recruiting background. How is the agency world different for you?
Yeah, well, it's a good point, and it's interesting. So while I come from in-house for about the last 5.5 years before I started Worth, about the 5 or so years before that, I was actually on the agency side as well. So I have a pretty varied background, and the probably one of the rarer people that went from agency to in-house back to agency. But corporate recruiting is, I love both sides, and people often ask me, oh, will you ever go back to in-house? And I don't know, right? I'm enjoying running my own firm right now, but I think there's unique things about recruiting in-house where you get to contribute to that strategy, especially in a head of talent role, contribute to the strategy and the way that you recruit, and the way that you want your company's story to be told, that is unique, and also making sure that you're representing the company, but also being a candidate advocate. And I think there are similarities on the agency side. I don't think it's as different as many people think. On the agency side, you certainly have to continue to be a candidate advocate and always do right by the candidate, present them the most interesting opportunities. But you can't just only represent the candidate, right? You have to be an advocate for your clients as well. You have to think about their needs, and make sure that you're really balancing that piece as kind of the middle person, to make sure everybody gets what they're looking for.
Right. So, I mean, that's interesting. In terms of your day, right? Like, what did your typical day look like at Compass versus what does it look like today?
Yeah, that's a great question. In the early days at Compass, I was definitely very heads down recruiting to try to build our engineering team from what was then 8 people to now it's in the hundreds. But certainly in my early career there, it was a lot of hands-on recruiting. It was a lot of sourcing. I only wish I had some of the tools that I had now from a sourcing perspective, that your team has built in those early days at Compass. I would have worked probably a lot fewer hours. But then my role at Compass transformed, and I was in mostly a kind of managerial seat. I was still hands-on with a couple of roles here and there, but certainly had a lot more responsibilities to be speaking to our hiring managers, to be building the processes that would bring us from a company that had to hire 20 people a year to a company that had to hire 2,000 people a year. As you can imagine, there was quite a bit of work to do that, and to also build and manage my team. And I think I'm actually going through a similar journey with Worth. Of course, when it was just me and I started taking on clients, I was doing all of the work, all of the sourcing, and I was doing all of the client management, all of the candidate management, and that was something that was kind of a back to basics for me, which was really fun. And now again, going through that transition, I don't think Worth is going to be hiring 2,000 people or probably making 2,000 placements a year anytime soon. But having the ability to grow the team and having the ability to begin to manage again, and bring in clients and be able to hand off those clients to some of the people that I work with now, has been fulfilling and fun, and it feels like a journey that I've actually been through. Similar, but certainly has its unique differences on any given day.
Yeah, you're right, and it's quite astonishing to me in terms of in a very short span you've gone from just 16 months. You've gone from one-man army to right now a team of 5. Still growing, what I've seen in my brief stint with this industry is it's very difficult to scale recruiting businesses, right? So
Yeah.
I can't remember the exact statistic, but out of all the agencies in United States, 95% of them are less than 7 or 5 recruiters, right? So,
Yeah.
So you're already probably in top 5 or 10 percentile, right? So just 16 months.
Yeah.
So why do you think that is? And in terms of scaling Worth from just you to now 5 people, what were the challenges and bottlenecks that you faced?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's something that talking again about the Compass experience. It's hard to find great recruiters, right? There are a lot of gaps in people's experience, oftentimes, and I think that could be the reason why it's really hard to scale a team of recruiters that me as the principal or as the CEO of the company that I can really trust to hand off clients to, right? Because tools like yours, Recruiterflow, certainly help my ability and other people who lead recruiting firms' ability to manage more clients. But we can't scale exponentially. We're at the end of the day, we're just people. We're just one recruiter, right? So finding the people that you really trust to be able to hand off clients and to ensure that those clients then still get a great experience, it is difficult, right? And I think the second piece that is difficult is devising the internal processes and systems that allow those people to be efficient and to scale, right? So that's some of what I think about, and I think we're running into those some of those challenges right now. We're at 5 people. It's making sure all of the recruiters have enough work to do. It's making sure that they're all engaged with clients, that they feel like they're a part of the process. Because the last thing that you want, I think, your team to feel like is they're just throwing resumes at the wall and they have no context on what's going to stick. That's not the way you want to do it. You want to be really consultative in your approach and really understand the company's needs fully, so you can be a better partner to them.
That's right. No, that's great. So, you mentioned something quite interesting about time management. Right now, what does your typical day look like? Like, how do you manage your time, over a day or let's say maybe over a week?
Yeah. Well, every week is different. And that's one of the things I like about recruiting is I think it's dynamic, right? It has elements of management, it has elements of sales, it has elements of relationship management, and negotiation, and many other elements that I like about it. So every week is very different. I typically try to reserve a good portion of my morning for catching up on the last day. So the emails that came in maybe later at night, or things that my team needs. So I try to dedicate my morning to that, call it team, clients, and just candidate or client emails. And then in the afternoon is where I try to shift and be more what I would say like candidate centric, right? So getting to my sourcing. I don't get to source as much as I would love to as you start to run a team. That definitely becomes difficult. But I think from a time management perspective, it's still so important for whether you're running a firm. If you're active on searches, you have to outline that time to source. So my afternoon, I would say, gets a little bit more candidate centric into early evening and thinking about where am I with the searches that I have on, and how can I add horsepower to them, whether that's through collaborating with my team on sourcing, whether that's sourcing my own candidates, whether that's writing up an email that's going to go to my existing network. I really think about that in kind of the second half of the day. So it doesn't always have that kind of perfect down the middle cut where, after lunch, I'm able to do all of that. But that's how I map it out in my head, to be able to get to everything. And I try to stay relatively regimented with that. Again, I think for more junior recruiters, I think that is honestly one of the hardest parts of the job, is just the time management piece. And it's something that really only comes with, people can have good inherent skills with it, but it's something that really comes with experience when you're working on many different searches and there's things flying from all angles. Really staying disciplined and on task, I think, is really important for a recruiter who's coming up through the business and their experience.
Great. So a quick question. So this requires, recruiting requires a lot of context switching, right? So in the morning, as you said, you're talking to candidates, clients, making sure all the moving parts are in place, and then in the afternoons you're getting into the sourcing mode. So you are it's difficult for people to switch contexts, especially during a productive day. Do you have rituals or some habits that help you switch the context?
I'd say in the morning it's ton. I mean, it's really all day. There's a lot of context switching. You have to kind of stay apprised of what your email inbox or Slack inbox, and if people need answers right away, then you want to be the person who's representing the client, and you want to get them their answer right away. I think what I've tried to train myself on for context switching is the fact that we live in an incredibly right now culture. Everything has to be right now. If somebody sends you a Slack, it's right in front of you, you get a notification, and it's staring you in the face, right? And it's begging you to click that and to respond to it immediately. So I got some, I think, really, really great advice earlier in my career from one of my managers at Compass. And she always told me to slow down a little bit, right? And to not provide that, I have a tendency to provide emotional responses sometimes too. So just giving my brain the time to process, what am I being asked, whether it's something that's positive or negative. And I think less often than we think or than we evaluate, you have to respond right now. So I always get back to my clients. I always get back to my candidates pretty much within 24 hours, almost without fail, right? And there are many cases where I'm responding within 30 seconds, right? But building in some sort of internal framework to decide, does this actually need to be right now? And you can still look great and respond within an hour or 2 hours, and that's a pretty immediate response for people, whether it's Slack or email, and they're not going to say, "Oh, Nolan's slow to respond," where it can allow you to stay on that sourcing, right? If you're sourcing from 2 to 3 and you get a Slack at 2:15. Responding at 3 is probably not going to be the end of the world, unless it's somebody's not showing up to an interview. Then you got to troubleshoot it right away. But I think just building in devices to understand that is a good practice.
We've had a crazy year this year, right? 2020. I'm sure your plans, whatever you had, have gone haywire. But in your mind, what does 2021 look like to you?
Yeah, hopefully a little bit more predictable, I think, would be nice. And yeah, 2020 certainly has been unpredictable, and obviously with the pandemic situation, I think we're all hoping for a 2021 that feels a little bit more calm and steady and even keeled. From our own growth perspective, I think it's really making sure that we that we double down and provide amazing service to the clients that we have, and also serve our candidates that are in our network very, very well. So putting in place some systems to ensure that we're staying in touch with people on the candidate side, to make sure that we're constantly kind of touching them, and making sure that they know that we're here for them if and when a job process, they want to start a job interview process. I think a lot of people in 2020 have been hesitant, right? Of course, there was tons of layoffs, which was really terrible, and it was like, as a recruiter, you always want to see a great volume of good candidates, but not ever in that way, right? Yeah. Where there's mass layoffs, and you want to help people the best you can, but certainly in the in late Q1 and early Q2, there was many great candidates on the market, but not as many people hiring, which was just a really difficult situation for everybody, I think. So I think in 2021, there will be a lot of candidates who hopefully, knock on wood, the world stabilizes a little bit, and who will want to start looking for their next move, and just making sure that we're well positioned and really know what our clients are looking for to get them the best talent on the market for them.
Sure. Since you mentioned, client experience, Nolan, I want to pick your brains about it. So one of the things that new recruiters constantly struggle with is, business development. And how did you go about it, and what does your business development process look like today?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say that business development, I think, is difficult for junior recruiters, for people just entering the business, because they don't have the network yet. And I think there is certainly value in cold emailing or cold calling. I did a lot of that early in my career, especially when I started on the agency side, to try to get in front of people, to make that client list and to grow your network of people who know that you're a reliable recruiter. I look at business development a little bit differently, at least at this point in my career, where business development is always being done. It's really through the kind of networking, the cold emailing, the cold calling, that will get you clients, right? If you hustle hard, but that's not going to get your name out there as a great and trusted recruiter. So whether it's contacts with venture capital firms, whether it's contacts with other recruiters, I think oftentimes I see junior recruiters, especially like in-house, almost like afraid to talk to their competing recruiters, right? They lost 2 candidates to the same company, like, go talk to that person. When I was at Compass, I had a great network of recruiters who we were competing against day in, day out at their tech companies. And honestly, that's allowed, now that I'm on the agency side, us to do business development in a more streamlined process, where these are people that I already know. I'm not cold emailing them, because I built a relationship with them when I didn't need something. And they're honestly just, they're clients now, but they're honestly just friends first. So I tell the story oftentimes that at Compass, for a while, we were always competing and either winning or losing offers to companies like Flatiron Health and companies like Oscar, and we also had this very tight network of the heads of recruiting there, me and Hillary, who ran it at Flatiron, and Jan, who ran it at Oscar and now runs it at Sidewalk Labs, and many other folks that we had in our networks of competing tech companies. And it's okay to talk. It's okay to exchange ideas. And that just goes to building your network, and that just goes to your future ability to develop business. So I think the advice I would have for people looking to develop business is just play the long game, right? And it's best to build those relationships when you don't need something, because those are the people who are going to trust you later on.
Right. That's really interesting, because I see a whole lot of, and we provide cold email sequences, right? And
yep.
I've been telling recruiters that, hey, this is not the solution. This is a tool that will get you there, but it's building relationships and making sure that you deliver for your clients is the best way to scale a recruiting business. Because I've done, I get to see a lot of data about a lot of recruiting agencies, and one thing that, to my astonishment, that I have seen is, larger, more successful, and faster growing agencies actually have fewer clients per recruiter, right? So they spend more time recruiting, talking to candidates, and basically converting those candidates, and thus delivering a better experience to those clients, and those clients keep coming back to them, and they don't have to do as much business development.
I think that's exactly right. And I think the other piece of that is that when you go super deep with the client and they know you very well and you've provided them good, great service, and you've placed candidates with them, they're going to be the ones who are endorsing you to the next client, right? It's much more powerful, when you're talking to a new potential client, not just to say, hey, I'm great at this, but to say, hey, here are 2 or 3 companies that will tell you that have worked with me within the last 6 months, 12 months, whatever it is. Here's how we work, and this is why they're really providing great service to us. So that power of being able to use your clients as references, I think is a big piece of business development too, because we get asked that when we're talking to new clients quite often. And you can't just hit up the same exact people over and over. So you want to make sure you've got that set of people who will go to bat for you.
That's right. That's absolutely right. Okay, let's change gears a bit. Nolan, I want to understand. So let's say Nolan, who has just started working at Compass, what would be your one advice to that Nolan?
Oh, to the one that just started working at Compass. That's a good question. No substitute for the hard work. There's no shortcut to build a recruiting function. I think there are I could point to many mistakes I made along the way, and I'm sure I could go back and had a list of saying to the Nolan that started at Compass, don't do this or don't try this as a new process, but those would be too many to list. I would just say to fail fast and continue to iterate. I think that's what I did, but I probably stuck with some ideas too long, and had some successes and some misses, and that's always the case. But I would also say, really, really strap in for the ride, because when I joined a startup, it was a 30-person startup, and I don't think I could have seen it getting to a 2,000 or 3,000 person company in 5 years, and been in charge of the function that was meant to grow that company in that amount of time. So it was a lot of work. It was a lot of fun. It was really the best professional learning experience of my career. So I would just say, strap in and enjoy the ride.
That's brilliant. Okay, so we talk about successes a lot, and it's always great to go back to those golden moments. But I want to talk about a failure or a miss that you had in last 1.5 years at Words.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And I think early on, probably one of the mistakes that I made is, I think I look back and there were a couple of clients that I feel like when it was just a one-man show, you always want to underpromise and overdeliver. I think while I was still building the company, I can point to 1 or 2 clients where I was confident in my ability to deliver when I first had the conversation with them. But knowing that I was only one person and not fully knowing what my capacity was like in the beginning, I do think there was probably a couple of clients that we under-delivered for. one specifically, I think we've definitely come back from that and made really good strides and had success with that client. But it just goes back to what we were speaking about earlier, is really having a good gauge of your capacity or your firm's capacity, and making sure that you can really deliver on what you say you deliver on, right? Because I think it's always a good reminder, as I grow the company, sure, there's 5 people now, but I really, really have to stay dialed into not only my bandwidth, but what I think the other people that I work with have from a bandwidth perspective, and they should be able to manage most of that on their own. But it's really, the buck stops with me, and it's my job to make sure that we're providing that great service to any client that we bring on.
That's great. I mean, thank you so much for your candidness, because the reason I ask this question is, we see everybody just talk about their successes, and it kind of creates a survival bias in the industry, especially for young recruiters who are just starting out. And it's important for us to tell them that, hey, even somebody with so much experience is going to screw up, right? And it's okay to screw up, but you gotta keep going on, and sooner or later you kind of figure it out how this whole thing works.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's exactly right. I think on the client side, what I talked about is important, and I also think about for young recruiters, I think about the ability to be okay with failure. This is an industry that inherently has a lot of failure. The majority of the people that you send to clients are not going to get hired, right? It's like if you get a new client and you send 5 candidates and one of them gets hired, that's pretty good. But you've still failed 80%, if you're looking at it like that, because it only, that 1 in 5 got hired. But so I think it's being okay with those failures, not just at the beginning of the process, but at the end of the process. I mean, there's plenty of recruiting processes that I can look back on that was a lost offer, or that I was helping one of my team that, the person accepted with another company that we weren't representing. Like, these are people, it's their decisions. We can't pressure people into decisions. We just have to kind of lay out the facts and allow people to make their own decisions. So just being okay with failure. If you want to be a recruiter, you have to be okay with a reasonable level of failure to get it right for your companies.
You're right. You're absolutely right. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about, so you're constantly growing Worth Search, or you're onboarding new recruiters, and you've created a pretty sizable talent function at Compass, right? What does your process of training a new recruiter looks like, and what are the kind of traits that you look for when you are hiring a new recruiter for Worth?
Traits, I'll start with the second one first. The traits that I look for are, hustle for sure, especially doing, we do some retained and executive search, but a lot of the search that we do is contingency. You've got to have that kind of hustle gene. You got to have that ability to to get to a lot of people, to have a lot of conversations, again, you're going to fail often with candidates not being hired or not getting through an interview process, especially with the technical bar that some of these companies have. So I look for hustle. I think that bleeds into grit, which grit is really the trait or the characteristic that's going to get you through those failures, right? And those tough breaks, and keep you plowing forward to you gotta trudge through the mud to get to the glory in a lot of these processes. And then I definitely look for empathy and self-awareness. I think I think the two go hand in hand in understanding how people want to be treated, and you have to kind of know yourself well, know how you're presenting yourself and coming off to have that empathy. So those are some of the key characteristics that I look for. As far as training a new recruiter, I've certainly had a good amount of experience with that. And I think it's teaching people to do it the right way. And what do I mean by that? I really think about somebody's development, and I think about the fact that it's okay to fail in the beginning, and it's okay to not make placements, right? As long as you're having the conversations that are getting people to the right place, I think that's what's important. So when I'm training a new recruiter, I'm certainly training a lot of the sourcing pieces and being diligent with your time management. I think that's a big struggle for junior recruiters, is when you're sourcing, you can kind of go into that silo, that hole, and kind of forget about the other things that you're working on. So time management is something huge that I focus on. And then I do a lot of mock pitches, mock phone calls to say, hey, these are like, I'm going to play a nice candidate, or I'm going to play a candidate who comes off as a little bit rude, or I'm going to play a client who's a little bit upset. And we literally do mock calls to train people up. I'll typically do that in an interview setting as well, to see if a person knows how to handle a little bit of a curveball. But I think that type of applied practice is better than saying, oh, what if a candidate is rude? What would you do? And having somebody describe it than just putting them through the paces on it.
No, you're right. All right. Thank you so much, Nolan, for giving us time. It was a brilliant conversation. And